Dela's voice has been made possible by the generosity of sponsors like you. What makes live shows so special is that interaction between the viewer and the host and the guest, whether it's through the chat or the live phone calls. This connection is created because people are allowed to share their experiences, their feelings, their thoughts. And this makes for a beautiful dynamic of energy that's connecting people in so many different ways. And that's how we learn. That's the best way we can help one another, is by connecting at such deep levels. This is Dela Futui, the host of Dela's Voice, hoping to spark your soul. Hello, and welcome to another Dela's Voice Sunday live talk show, where we bring you information, hoping that you will get inspired, and we motivate for wellness, recovery, and change. I am so blessed to have another opportunity to join you again on one more Sunday. And we're going to hear from another amazing individual. Today, we're talking about the joys and the pains of parenting. Just like any other part of our lives, parenting is filled with love and joy, and with those heartaches and pains. Today we're talking to a guest who is somehow able to extract all the love and joy in the midst of something that most people may call the most challenging parenting experience. Andrew Lund is a husband, a father of 3 wonderful children, the youngest of whom was born with a rare genetic disorder called Pfieffer Syndrome. While navigating parenthood and the challenges that accompany raising a medically fragile child, Andrew enjoys reflecting on how his children have changed his outlook on life. Outside of parenting, Andrew also owns and operates 2 private preschools in Central Florida. Grieving the life you thought you would have and accepting the life you have been gifted, Andrew says, has been the biggest struggle he has had to overcome. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on Dela's Voice Sunday live talk show, my guest, Andrew Lund. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, good morning, Dela. How are you?
I am very well. Thank you so much. Now that you're here, I'm very excited.
All right. Well, thanks for reaching out to me and inviting me to come and speak a little bit, about my life.
Well, I'm very excited to hear all about that, and I wanted just to give a little background of how actually I met you, Andrew. I was browsing on Instagram, just like most of us do, and I see this amazing little girl with what seems like a disorder. I have no idea what it is. And then I see this father who is just hanging out with his little girl. singing, and you play music for her, and you always engage, and she has the most beautiful smile.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking to myself, who is this guy? So I check you out, and there's tons of pictures of
Mhm.
you and Hadley, and your family, and your beautiful dog, and um, just the love and the joy that comes through these pictures is what really drew me to your story. And I thought, this guy has like 70,000 followers on Instagram. What are the chances of him answering messages? I don't know. So I messaged you, and I asked you if you'd be open to interviews, and the rest is history. So I thank you very much. Does that sum it up?
That's how we got rolling here. Yes, that's what brings us to today.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. I want to make sure to take a moment and say hello to people who are watching the show right now. The amazing, amazing audience of Della's Voice, who are always here because they want to learn more. They want to get inspired, and I want to please ask you to share this talk with other people, um, because this story is one that will inspire many. So let's get started with this. And I want to put up actually our banners so that people know what we're talking about as they come on. First of all, I asked Andrew I said, what would you name uh, this show? Like, what would the topic, the title be? And I love this: daydreams and dad jokes. Um, why did you pick that, Andrew?
Uh, Well, when I think about what I'm trying to accomplish on Instagram, and I'm still trying to figure that out, quite frankly. But I'm trying to strike a balance between education and advocacy, uh, as well as being real and embracing what you're doing and being entertaining, but not for entertainment's sake, but because you're a dad and you goof around with your kids, and sometimes you're going to capture those moments. So it's kind of just a blend also of realizing your life is unique and different because of your circumstance, and so within that mind frame, what can you make of that?
Um, I I love that because humor is so important in life, and I mean, most of us take life way too seriously, I think.
Mhm.
As but to be able to find humor in the toughest moments of life, as I expect parenting a medically fragile child would bring. How do you feel about that?
Well, that's something my wife Christy and I have kind of agreed to is you can laugh or you can cry, but let's do both. Um,
Mm,
this is hard. This isn't something you expected, but it's something you can work through, and it's still full of moments. Powerful moments that are going to make you feel things good and bad. So just embrace it.
yeah. uh, so important, so important. And so that's what you had said, that one of the biggest struggles was grieving over a life that you thought you would have, and I can so understand that. um, and then you are handed this life, and now what do you do with it? So you make the best of it, and you look at it as a gift. I just love that you look at it as a gift. And so we want to get to that, but for the people who don't know, Andrew, and I had to do some digging around. I like I explained to you, I didn't know what Pfeiffer syndrome
Mhm.
was, and I was really flabbergasted by finding out that it's really not that rare. Can you talk a little bit about Pfeiffer syndrome and give people a little bit of information on that?
Sure. Pfeiffer syndrome is a spontaneous medical genetic mutation It happens just because it happens. There's no strong correlation to anything. It's not something that's passed between two parents necessarily, unless one of them happened to have that. But it's a mutation of the FGFR2 gene, and it's related to a couple other syndromes, such as Pfieffer Syndrome or Crouzon syndrome. And primarily what it is when the body's developing in our skulls, we have sutures. And this genetic mutation causes some of those sutures to fuse prematurely. And with that, there's another of other markers that will come along with it. But the bones in the skull are going to fuse prematurely. The midface of your child is going to develop at about a third of the rate of a typical child. And as you said, with Pfieffer syndrome, this happens spontaneously, 1 in 102,000 births. And Crouzon's is 1 in around 46,000. I believe Apert is in the 62,000 range. So it's not something that you likely have heard about or know about until it happens to you or someone in your sphere.
Yeah. So just to make it a little bit clear, as you explained about the sutures in the skull. So normally you said those sutures don't fuse in Pfieffer syndrome, those sutures fuse earlier than normal, correct? So yeah. I can imagine that that would mean that the brain doesn't have enough room to grow. Is that a normal deduction?
That's it in a nutshell. Yes, dependent on, and each of these children may have a different set of sutures that fuse. Hadley had bicoronal, so like left to right, sagittal, which is down the middle, and then her left lambdoid were all fused early. And so that's going to constrict the skull. Usually the sutures aren't bound and they're floating. So as your little one is born and their brain starts to develop, it's like plate tectonics of the earth. They're kind of expanding and they're mobile. But when they're fused, you're going to have pressure. You're going to have the potential for intracranial pressure, and also the potential that the brain isn't going to have all the room it needs to have a healthy trajectory and to grow. Now, the good thing about that is there are medical interventions and lots of things now that can be done to help these children have the potential for a more typical life. And many do have a really pretty typical life. That's not necessarily how things are tracking for Hadley, and that's okay. It's okay to have a disability or disabilities. But many of these kids are doing great or thriving or have graduated college. You just don't know where you're going to end up, but you definitely want to see where you can take things.
So how old is Hadley?
Hadley just turned 6.
Oh, that's so nice. So when did you guys find out that Hadley was going to be born with Pfieffer syndrome?
We had a definitive diagnosis confirmed by a genetic panel around 32 weeks gestation. My wife is a labor and delivery nurse, so she's well in tune with child development and prenatal child development. Around 23 weeks or so on an anatomy scan, we knew something was up. We didn't know exactly what, but the key hallmark that they picked up on first was that her head was measuring several weeks further in gestation than they were expecting. So we're at a 23-week scan and they do measurements and it's showing like 25.6. And they're like, oh, that's not right. Let's try a different angle. And so that ended up getting referred to high-risk neonatology. We worked with 2 different neonatologists, both of whom were convinced something was going on. So Christy did get an amniocentesis. First round of that didn't produce anything because unless you're looking at a very specific gene panel, it's not going to pick up on this because of the rarity. But then finally with the more specific gene panel and the second neonatologist, who's just amazing, she actually at an appointment, she's like, look, and this is the one appointment I've ever missed. But to Christy, she's like, look, I'm 99% certain your child has Crouzon syndrome. Crouzons and Pfieffer are very, very similar. Again, they're that same family of mutations. So she was able to figure it out just by, reading images and whatnot. But it was later confirmed finally around 33 weeks.
So I can imagine that. I mean, your wife, Christy, she's heard about this because she's a no, she didn't.
No.
Oh, wow.
No. I mean, she's been a participant as an L&D nurse for thousands of births at this time over the course of her career, and no, she had never directly encountered a child with Pfeiffer's, Crouzons, or Aperts.
Mm-hmm. So then what happened?
So you're scared, right? you're hit with this huge window of uncertainty. The neonatologist, the first thing they say is, "Hey, this is what it is. It's going to be okay, but don't Google it." And yes, and
of course you Google it.
Of course you Google it. With anything medical, what's most likely to pop up and be represented are the most extremes, and visually the most extremes and whatnot. And so, you go into panic mode. That's shock, that's crisis. But then the sun comes up a day or two later and it's like, okay, what are we doing now? And it's like, we're going to make the best of this. And so you turn to your own community and your friendships and family members for support. But then also, okay, Google wasn't a good avenue, but social media and Facebook are powerful ways to connect people of similar experience. And so through Facebook, we were able to hook up with families with this condition. And Christy was fortunate enough to connect at the time with someone who they clicked and who would text with her at all times and was just the comfort and support that she needed. That in reality, I could be there as a husband and a supporter, but I wasn't everything she needed in that moment. But there was someone out there that was.
Yeah. Andrew, I have a son who's 20, and I remember being pregnant with him, and literally the whole 9 months was consumed by the thoughts of what can I do for this baby to be healthy? What am I putting in my body? What am I putting in my thoughts? What am I saying? Listen to Mozart. Okay. And so the thought, I always think of this, and it always brings tears to my eyes, because the first thing that happens in the delivery room when the baby's born, you want to make sure they're healthy and they have all fingers and toes. And it's like, for me, I would say, the thought of what did I do to make this happen? Is it something I did to make this happen? And I know you can't answer for your wife, but this must have been really challenging. Do you think at any point she asked herself, what did I do wrong?
I think that's a normal human reaction, right? Everything needs causation. Some if and then, but not everything works like that. No. Genes and science, and they don't always work like that.
Yeah.
And it's funny, if we go that route, Christy's completely off the hook. The only correlating thing to causing Pfieffer syndrome, the only correlation that they have in medical studies, my understanding, is advanced paternal age. It's me. Mm-hmm. But it's not. I mean, yeah. I'm 33 at the time. I'm not going to take that as old. This isn't because I'm old. Yes. But advanced paternal age is the only connection. Apart from that, it's just the genes decided to do something, and that's no one's control.
Yeah. But you didn't know that then, did you? Like, I mean, I want to see a clear path of that growth for you, because a lot of people are going through something like this. A lot of people do blame themselves for things like this.
I, 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 in reflecting back, I don't know that like blame or how did we end up here was the driving thing we needed to work through.
Mhm.
It's how is Hadley going to come into the world? What are her needs going to be? What are we going to need to do to help her have a meaningful life?
Yeah.
So it was more on, what's our game plan and who do we need to connect with? And that was actually one kind of fortunate thing. A lot of children with Pfieffer syndrome, they don't know until the delivery room, rolls in and they see
Wow.
these abnormalities. Because we knew, we were actually able to connect with online community, but also some medical professionals.
Yeah.
So we had a craniofacial consult in utero, which is very, very unusual. Usually people don't have that opportunity. But we were able to meet with uh, basically plastics. So plastic surgeons are a big part of the treatment because some of the initial treatments, you might have a cranial vault reconstruction where they're going to open some of those sutures up and allow that room for that brain to grow. But also, I mentioned the midface is going to develop at a much slower rate. So there's a frontal orbital advancement. The eyes, they need to move the brow bone out to provide extra protection for your child's eyes. And so we actually had consult around 32, 33 weeks with these medical teams, so we could start to have a plan and an expectation of what is the likely, algorithm course of treatment for Hadley.
Yeah. You mentioned that a lot of people actually don't find out till the baby's born. I
Mhm.
mean, how would they know? Like, it's not likely for me to go and ask my doctor for an amniotic fluid testing for Pfeiffer disorder, right? Unless there's reason for that.
Well, and you wouldn't, and I think that too, even within Pfeiffer syndrome, there's a whole range. There's 3 different subtypes of Pfeiffer syndrome. Some presentations are much more pronounced than others. So a lot of it comes down to just the specifics of how your child's body wires and comes together. Um, and back to the neonatologists and whatnot, the first things that they are often looking for are the trisomies, and Down syndrome and things like
Yeah.
that. But with something with 1 in 100,000 births, like that is rare enough that it doesn't make sense necessarily to be looking specifically for that set unless there's some other canary in the coal mines, something to suggest.
Yeah.
And in our case, yeah, the head measurements were off enough that there was something to look for.
Yeah. Yeah. So Hadley comes, right? Hadley comes, and you now have to navigate this new and challenging um, parenting style because you have 2 other kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? And 2 beautiful boys, by the way, which I had the pleasure of watching your family on that little video you shared on uh, orange socks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and I saw the support of the family and just the love and that you have for one another. It's really beautiful. So Hadley comes to the world, and uh, you have to navigate this new lifestyle. Who do you turn to?
Who do you turn to? Well, you turn to people within your own life and immediate sphere. Your friends, your family. We're fortunate enough to live in very close proximity to my parents, who are very, very involved. So that's wonderful. You need to put a team together of the right grouping and subgrouping of medical professionals. and we were able to hit it off and find a wonderful match of a pediatrician from right off the bat, and then start to determine who do we need to talk to, an ENT, a pulmonologist, a craniofacial team. And then beyond that, you have questions that are very specific to your unique child, and the internet is a wonderful resource for that. There are subgroups on Facebook devoted specifically to Apert-Cruzans and Pfeiffers, to Chiari syndrome, all different things where you can be a member of a community. And community is just a really, really powerful thing for support, for knowledge, and for people that get what you're going through.
Yeah. So when you decided to kind of start this thing on Instagram, Andrew, first of all, how did it start? Because I think it's wonderful in so many ways. Yes, we talked about bringing awareness and advocacy and being the voice for Hadley. How did it start? Like, did you just one day pick up the camera and say, "Oh, I'm going to start a channel"? What did you do? Walk us through that experience.
Sure. So like early on and right after Hadley's birth, we were still in such a vulnerable place that we weren't looking to like put it all out there. Like, we had a lot to sort through. But around a year and a half, 2 years in, we're like, hey, there's enough going on here. Like, we have enough stability, and we have enough people that care about us and our daughter that it's time to like give an outlet or a centralized place to communicate some of that. So the first thing that Christy and I mutually agreed to do was to start our Facebook page, Truly Hadley Deeply. And so that started before Instagram, well before Instagram. And most of the people there we know directly through one channel or another, one avenue or another from life. But as we worked through that, there came a certain point where I tried Instagram, or I went over and looked and sort of the things there. And I'm like, I think I have something to offer here. I think our family has something to offer here in terms of education, entertainment, and emotion. Because really, I think those are the core three things that Instagram is great about doing. So I started a page with Christy's blessing. I run that page. She doesn't really even go on Instagram, but I show her what we do. And it's just a place for me to kind of share what I'm going through and thinking and interacting with my daughter and my family life in general. And it's been a really good outlet for me.
How so?
As a man, I have wonderful friendships. I have long-standing friendships with peers and whatnot. But when we get together, we're looking for some escapism, probably. Some camaraderie, some just letting things loose, versus talking about our hardships or what we're feeling or what we're worried about.
What? Men don't talk about feelings?
Okay, they do, but not maybe with the frequency that I feel that I need to. Okay? Yeah. And so I don't know, even if it's just me talking to myself or sharing for myself where I'm in that moment, it's a great way to capture that. And it's also a wonderful way for me to capture moments in time with my daughter and about where we were at, so that as time goes on and however things play out, I have something to look back on and that I've made moments that were built around her.
Those moments, those moments count. We miss those moments a lot of times. And I love how you captured those moments. One of the recent ones you had put was a baby giraffe and a parent giraffe. How did that come about?
Okay, so back to the dad joke thing or whatnot, and obviously with Instagram and the rise of reels, there are things that trend and get popular and all that. And last summer there was that Sia song, Unstoppable, and it was all these all these parents, mostly moms, but like them hunching over their child with, this protective posture. And then it flipped to an image of like a lion and a lioness, like protecting her cubs and all that. And there was a reason that people were doing this, and it kind of had to do with parent rights and the pandemic and all that. And that was great and all, but I'm like, there's a different way we could go with this. And it's just like, okay, let's be a little self-deprecating. Our life is what it is. We're still protective, but maybe we don't, fit a mold. Let's do it with a giraffe. And so we did it because that was us and it was real. And we were just hanging out because I had Hadley that day, and it did really well.
That's so cool. Does she appreciate this? Like, does she know what you're doing? And do you show her the videos and like the comments? And does she get involved in that?
She has intellectual disability. So I don't think she has a really nuanced understanding, but she definitely knows that it's quality time. She knows, and a lot of what we do, if we're like talking to the camera and then we're going to have a caption message underneath it, she knows that we're filming, and she's emotes along with that. She emotes and sees herself and I in the camera. So she's an active participant and aware, but it's quality time to her. That's one-on-one. That's I'm holding you. We're laughing, we're smiling, we're doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been doing this Instagram for how long now?
At some point we started adding pictures, but then around May of 2020 is when we started making videos and doing some of that content. And that's when, we started to develop a little bit more of a following.
Mm-hmm. And so, what did you tell yourself? Like at what point did you say, whoa, like this is like reaching people?
It's hard to tell, because you see reels and you see, how many likes something gets, or now you see the reach it gets. And we finally, after a couple months of posting content, we finally had one that did like 200,000 views. And there was a tropical storm about to come through Florida, and it was named Tropical Storm Elsa. And we hadn't been out of the house for like 4 months because of pandemic and all that. But I told Christy, I'm like, we're going to buy Hadley an Elsa dress and we're going to go to our appointment today. And that like kind of blew up finally. And I'm like, whoa, okay. If we do something that's compelling or cute or entertaining, like people watch this stuff. And so it's not about views or likes or all that. It's about capturing moments or cracking a joke or feeling something or expressing something. And if that resonates with people, awesome. And if it doesn't, like I did it because it made sense to me.
I can imagine people who reach out to you are from all over the world. I mean, it's funny because I looked at some of the comments and I was like, wow, there's people from all over the world here. And so do you find that a lot of them are going through something similar or no?
Yes and no. And it is interesting to see, like, internationally is the predominance of who watches our page. And you can see who follows you by breakdown, and we're only 20% domestic, and then we're 80% international. And I think part of that, I think there's a strong visual element to what we put out in terms of Hadley and her expressions and then our interactions. And that's not language dependent, No. That's not language dependent at all. So it works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's partially why. But I will say, we talked about community and Pfieffer community and Apert Croissants. We meet and interact with a large number of international people that are navigating the same thing. And they can come with questions, or they just say, hey, look, I'm in India and my child has Pfieffer Syndrome, and we saw your page and just want to say hello. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And new families, oh, we just got this diagnosis. What should I know? Okay, I can talk to you and let me connect you to a whole nother group that can help you and love you and support you. Yeah. So that's kind of cool that we can help kind of send people to a trajectory where they may get what they need, or that resonates with them, that they feel, some commonality with what we're putting out there.
What has been one of the biggest lessons that you have learned from Hadley?
That what I thought was important in life was something very, very different than what's important in life. You talked about when you were anticipating your son and about, counting fingers and toes and these expectations. For the most part, we take all that for granted, right? We may worry, we may think about that, but we take that for granted. We expect that our child's going to grow and we're going to impart knowledge to them, and they're going to have this trajectory where they learn and they gain some autonomy and the ability to think and manage and do. And that's not always the case. And so like when we look at life and we distill it down, like what's really important, and happiness is really important, and comfort and safety are important, and meaning, and recognize that just because you don't fit a mold, that you don't conform to an expectation, doesn't make you less than. It just makes you unique. And it's like, how do you do that? That's changed the trajectory of our life, and that's cool because that's a challenge, and in some ways, that's a challenge that I needed.
I love that. I feel like we always grow through our life's adversities, and if we weren't, if we don't get challenged, we don't grow. It's such a tough question, but such a tough question. I don't know if you can answer that. When you see sometimes other people complaining about stuff,
Okay.
What's your thought process, and what is what is your thought process?
I think Christy and I have grown in that quite a bit, because it's, the initial reaction is when you see someone, complaining or expressing hardship over something that ultimately is probably pretty trivial in the grand scheme of life and the things we need to work through. But if that's like, we only know our own personal experience directly, right? We only know what we know. Yeah. And so it's all relative. It's all relative. And so I'm at a point where I'm willing in 9 cases out of 10 to give people grace, to understand that if you woke up 30 minutes late and your child was extra tired and it was hard getting out the door, like that was hard for you, and that was hard for you in the moment, and I get it. I understand, because I have hard things too, and my hard things probably do look a little bit different than yours. But that's what you feel. That's your perspective. That's your reality. And so that's okay.
Would you say that in the past few years, you have changed as a person in many ways, Andrew?
Sure. I would hope, continuous improvement should be all of our goals, right? And there's ups and downs to that. There's peaks and valleys. We don't have a linear trajectory in life. But I'd like to think that I'm continuing to grow and develop in my role as an individual and a father and a husband and just a member of society in, a healthy and productive way. That's the goal. And yes, I want to continue. And I don't know, as I'm getting a little bit older too, I need to reflect on things beyond myself, I guess. You know, it's not just about me and my sphere, but like, okay, you're 40 now. Like, how can what are you going to leave behind in terms of impact? So
What a good question. What do you wish to leave behind as a legacy? As an you said impact. I love that.
I don't know. I don't know, and it's not about me. That's not an ego thing, but like, I'm just starting to think, you know, with you know, challenge and trajectory of life and my family unit and professionally, it's like, okay, things are going okay. It's hard sometimes, but like, what are we going to do now? Because we have our bases covered. Let's go to that next step. That's what I'm trying to figure out right now, to be
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of you talked about advocacy.
Mhm.
Um, what is that? What is the big message, Andrew?
The big message is it's okay to be disabled. Because you're disabled, it doesn't mean that you need to be hidden away. You have rights and a place, and you should be seen. Uh, the big message is not everything.
Oh, we seem to have lost Andrew. Oh, I think maybe I know. Maybe his battery ran out. I'm sure we'll have him back momentarily. So let me have a look at the comment section. 1 second. Okay. So thank you so much for being here as you're watching this. I know this is not a typical Della's voice talk show, right? This is um yeah, this is a very interesting story. Uh, but honestly, sometimes um our world are so small. Um and this is I think this is what why this story impacted me so much that you know we look through Instagram, we look through social media, and then we stop where we want to stop, and sometimes we don't want to stop at those uh, on those stories that um, cause us a little bit of discomfort. And I think it's so important, excuse me, to take the time um, and learn about what's different, about what's out of our comfort zone. Um, and I think the more we do that, the more we educate ourselves about what's different, about what's out there. Because our lives can be really small. You know, our bubbles are really small. Um, we learn about what we want to learn about. We read about what we want to read about, and what's um, discomforting, we leave to the side. We pass through, and I think that's how I feel about a lot of stuff that cause stigma and discomfort. So if we can just take the time and educate ourselves about the stuff we don't know, and there's so much of it, in, individuals who will say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that. Oh, I don't want to see that. Oh, I don't want to. I'm not interested in looking at that." And I want us to be able to say, no, I can look at this. I because I want to learn about this because I know that this exists. I can't put my head in the sand. This exists, and I need to learn about that. And uh, we need to be aware of what's out. What's out there, and it's like I didn't know about Pfeiffer syndrome. There's so many things I don't know about. But if I close my eyes, if I turn my head the other direction, I will never learn. And so it's so important to talk about stuff we don't know about. So, oh, here's Andrew. I have him back. So here he is. Hi.
Whew. I'm so,
Battery?
I'm so sorry, but battery cut off, but
I
we're on the
thought
other laptop now.
so. I
I
thought
apologize,
so.
Dela.
No, it's no worries. It happens. I thought that's what happened. I heard it actually. So I was just saying, Andrew, I forget what we were talking about before you left, but I was just saying, sometimes we're like flipping through Instagram and social media, and we come across something that's uncomfortable for us, and we just pass through. And
Mhm.
I was just saying, we need to be a little bit more aware of the stuff that we don't know, so that we can educate ourselves. And that's the only way that we can learn. And uh, I think that's how we can get rid of the stigma around so many things that we are uncomfortable with. What do you think?
I agree completely, and I also recognize that the Instagram page I share with my daughter is potentially uncomfortable to a large group of people, and and so it's like, okay, what do you do with that, or what did they do with that? They have a couple options, right? They have the option to keep moving,
Yeah,
okay, and that's a great option.
yeah,
Okay, if you're not comfortable, if you're not in a place that you're willing to engage, that's a appropriate and adult thing to do, sort of. Okay, you have the option to engage in a negative way. Okay, and that happens quite a bit. And if someone's going to engage in a negative way, then they don't have the emotional intelligence to connect or grow or learn in that moment. And that's something that I, as a custodian of that page, I can't tolerate that. I need to shut that down.
mhm.
um, because if you can't engage in a responsible and respectful way, then there's not room for dialogue. Okay, but maybe
Can't
you are
even imagine.
uncomfortable.
I'm so sorry, but I have to ask you, like, I can't even imagine, why would anyone do that, but I'm sure you've had a few experiences with
Well,
that if you're talking about
it,
it.
it's just a matter of volume at some point as your reach grows, and you're reaching and you're creating some things that spark a little and get some momentum. Like, you're going to just be seen by a broader set of people that have different maturity levels or outlets. And half the time I feel bad for them, and I feel bad for the young men, some of the young men that will engage with the page, because um, they could learn so much from it. They could learn so much. And so those are the ones that are kind of right on the edge of they're saying something edgy, which ultimately is probably attention driven.
Yeah,
They need attention. They're trying to invoke response.
yeah,
But if they're like right on the border, sometimes I give them the benefit of the doubt, and I try to engage with them and answer their question or challenge them back. But unless it gets real civil really quick, then I just need to be done with it.
yes,
Because you can tell really quick whether you can have a meaningful conversation with someone that you've never met that's hiding behind a screen or not.
yeah,
And then the last possible thing is that someone can see that content. It can challenge them a little bit. Maybe it isn't in their comfort zone, but something resonates, something sparks. Oh, there's something here. Maybe I need to open my mind a little bit more to things that I'm not familiar with or uncomfortable with, because they're out there, and maybe they're not bad. Maybe I just haven't been exposed or experienced those things.
yeah. I want to put your Instagram page on here so that people can follow your beautiful stories with your daughter, because I think they're awesome. And I mean, Hadley's so beautiful, and I love how you engage with her, how you interact with her, and I just love everything about that page. So here it is. You can follow Andrew and Hadley's story and their family on Truly Hadley. And you mentioned that you had picked that name, Truly Hadley Deeply. You had said, I think this is what you said, that you had picked out at first on Facebook. Is that Do I remember correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. We also have a Facebook page, Truly Hadley Deeply. We still post there. Some of the older content is great in terms of narrative and some of the written content we put out. So definitely worth looking at. And my wife names that. So
Why? You know?
there's a pop song called Truly Madly Deeply.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
so she was kind of riffing on that, I
Okay.
guess, just making the pun. But also, I don't know. I think we try to be authentic and self-reflective, and it's our daughter, so it all kind of dovetails together nicely.
Yes, yes. So I have a difficult question to ask you.
Okay.
When you're out and about with Hadley, I imagine you have to have special facilities or special transportation, like maybe like a wheelchair or um, whatnot. How do people react?
How to It varies broadly. I think society's trying to do a better job of inclusion and awareness, but people are still learning, right? And I think one of the biggest opportunities is with parents of children and young children. There's often a motivation to like shut them from being inquisitive or engaging down. It's okay. Oh, look at the the girl in the chair, or her face looks different. Oh, look away, honey. Let's keep
Don't stare,
going.
don't stare. It's rude or something like
Correct.
that. Yeah, yeah.
And that's the wrong prompt.
Ah,
That's the wrong prompt completely that I would give parents, is rather than shut it down or look away, it's to engage, but it's to build commonality, right? So if you're in Target and we're there, I'll look at her face, say this or that. It's like, oh, well, did you notice her sparkly shoes? Those are pretty cool, right? You have a pair like that. If you can build a bond with children and give them a springboard to look at not as someone different, but as a peer, then conversations and interactions evolve really naturally. But it's when it's don't stare or something negative, like that's regressive behavior.
so this is where I want to say that kids have a special way of connecting to one another. They're not like us. They have not been conditioned long enough to see things and say, "Oh, that's what's wrong." They don't go that route unless we as parents have affected them in their thinking. So you're so right. And so it's okay to ask questions, right? I mean, it's okay to want to find out, because we're all different at the end of the day. We're all different. And so yes, you're right. I think as adults, we are scared. We're the ones who are scared of saying the wrong thing and doing the wrong thing. So, um, what is your suggestion in terms of parents wanting to teach their kids about, let's say, genetic disorders?
To teach about genetic disorders. Okay. I mean, when we teach young children, we want to develop them to have some form of self-awareness. And from there, we want them to have awareness of the greater world around them and all that. You're going to meet people of different shapes, sizes, colors, creeds, nationalities, dispositions, and whatnot. And with that, like, just because something isn't like you doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It doesn't mean it's not worth learning about or interacting with. That's an opportunity to engage with someone who's not like you. That's how you grow. Because if you didn't engage with things that weren't like you, you're stuck. your trajectory is stuck. But when you open yourself to engage, and I think also steering away from qualitative words like wrong. It's not wrong. There's nothing. And okay, yes, there are things not ideal with my daughter. Okay, that doesn't make them wrong. That's just they're facts. That's the way she is.
Yeah.
And so just like with any other protected class category, that's the way you are, that you're born into the world. Like we need to respect those without question, and we need to expect our children to respect those without question.
So you're in this position right now, and you probably noticed it more than other people who are not in your position. What are some things you want to see changed?
Things that I want to see changed. I think inclusion is such a buzzword right now.
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah.
It's all over the place. We've got to be inclusive of every category under the sun.
Yeah.
And that's great. But I think from a pragmatic standpoint, those are words. Like, what actionable things need to happen to truly be inclusive?
Yeah.
And I think society's just starting to think about that. But you have to be practical too. Like, I don't expect every door to be opened for my daughter or someone with a disability. Like, there's give and take to that. We don't expect the world, and we're not entitled to anything beyond respect. So emphasis on respect in regards to inclusion is, and then practical things within society that can allow people to engage and not be less than. And those are hard questions. And the, how to do that and monetarily and the risk reward of that, those are hard questions, but those are the questions that I think could be explored.
Yeah. And I think there's so much merit to that. And you are right. We are moving ahead as a society towards more inclusion. I think we're more aware today than we have been, and for me personally, I know so much more than I did even like a year ago. So little things that we can all do to make sure that everybody can fit in. Everybody can feel like they are valued and they are respected. And I think the best way would be, how would I want to be treated if I had a disability? How would I want to be? Would I want to not be able to go into this shop just because I was in a wheelchair? I think that's simple, right? And I used to have a shop, and I remember trying to navigate through the aisles, imagining myself in a wheelchair to see how possible it was for someone to be able to navigate. And I think things like that. What do you think?
Speaking from the perspective of the United States and ADA law and whatnot, I think access has been addressed or is being meaningfully addressed. And when it's not, there's due process and means to address that. But that's on like the facility side. I think the people side and the being welcoming or open, or at least, again, not treating people less than or having expectations, presuming things about people. That's more of an opportunity, and it's easier in some sense, but it's much harder.
It's hard. Because we tend to stereotype and we do tend to generalize. And I mean, you hear, for example, I don't know, like you said it yourself, that people with Pfieffer syndrome, there's so many differences in abilities. And so we can't just assume that just because someone has this syndrome is able or not able to do what we think is right, the general.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah.
And I mean, I'll be honest, on the continuum of ability with Pfeiffer syndrome, my daughter's on the most severe end in terms of lack of ability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But she's still there. She still has meaningful interactions. She emotes. She thinks things. She works to express them. She still has merit and value. But I bring this up because all the time we get questions of, well, didn't you know before she was born or pre-screen or this or that? The reality is we did, and she still had every right to have the opportunity at life and every right to live to her fullest potential.
Thank you. Thank you. And that would be a question that a lot of people would ask. And my question would be, well, what would you do? I mean,
you work with what you know, but yeah, no, there's this repeated question that, well, didn't you know? And with the advances in medical technologies, we did, and we still are fully confident in our decision. And despite all that, yeah, it didn't work out to every way that we would have hoped for, but we're still okay, and she's still okay, and she's still living a happy, meaningful life despite all that.
yes. And she has every right to be here just like everybody else. And that would be a question that you'd be asked a lot, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you so much for talking about that. Andrew, what do you want to leave people with today? Because our hour is up, and I want to make sure we have a couple more minutes before leaving. What would you want people to leave with today?
That you know people, and there are probably people in your sphere that are working through challenges, some that you may see and some challenges that you may not see. But we all owe each other, the benefit of the doubt and the grace and the support, just to make the most of life. And we should all be aspiring to make the most of life and all that we're given. It's a gift.
Life is a gift. Yes, you're right. Thank you so much. You're a gift, Andrew, I'm sure, to your family and to everybody who knows you. But by bringing this story, by talking about Hadley's story and your story, and by doing these little reels on Instagram, I can only imagine the ripple effect of what you're doing and who's reaching, and the hope and the inspiration you bring to people. It's just unimaginable. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your story with me on Dela's Voice today, Andrew. It's truly appreciated.
Well, thank you, Dela. Thank you for the opportunity to have a conversation and to put some different thoughts in people's heads. I think that's important, and that's the opportunity, and that's I think that's a fun and creative way, an outlet that Instagram allows people to do is to tell stories worth telling in a unique format.
Yes. And if someone is going through something similar and they want to reach out to you, they can do that on your Instagram page. If they want to ask you questions, I'm sure that you'll be able to help them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I respond to messages and engage in conversations where
Well, you do. Yes, you do respond to messages because you responded to.
There you go. There's the testimonial right there.
Testimonial right there. Thank you, Andrew. For everyone who's been watching us today, I want to thank you for being here, for giving us your hour, for learning with me, and please share this talk with other people who you think might benefit from the information that was given here today. Be kind. Absolutely. Live life the best you can. because like Andrew said, this is a gift. So till next time, this was Dela's voice sparking your soul. Thank you so much, Andrew, for being on here today.
Thank you, Dela.
Bye.